Well, thank you for coming to my talk. This is Threat Models, Landscapes, and Profiles. Oh my. So my name is Wade Wells. I go by wading through logs everywhere on the internet. I've been in InfoSec for 8 years now, primarily doing blue team stuff. So that's like threat hunting, threat intelligence, detection engineering, and a bunch of other things. Worked in a couple different environments, mainly in financial sector. That's the majority of my experiences in, but I've also done a couple managed security providers, which is always fun. I have a bunch of certifications. I don't really like listing those. I have a degree from Georgia Tech for my master's in cybersecurity, but it was just okay, to tell you the truth. It's a piece of paper. I do a lot of community work, hence me public speaking right now, right? I'm on the board of B-Side San Diego, so if you ever want to come down and say, hey, I will be there for sure. I do talking about the news. I'm usually on a regular on there, but every now and then something comes up. The past 2 weeks I haven't been on, but always fun to do. I'm one of the OG original BHIS like community leaders. I've been in the Discord since the very beginning and get to see all the stuff and watch it grow. I also have an Antisyphon training class where I teach CTI 101. And a lot of the topics you're going to be seeing today directly come from that class. So we will be able, and then we will go over the class a little bit at the very, very end. Just to let you know, I'm like a very big person. I'm very passionate about InfoSec, and hopefully that comes through in all these talks. And I'm always there for community and trying to help people. So if you ever need help or anything like that, please hit me up. Plenty of you have in the past, and hopefully tried to give you a good pathway into learning something that you needed to know. So to get this started, all this is going to be coming from the thoughts of a blue teamer, right? So we're talking about threat modeling, threat landscaping, threat profiling. And me as a defender, it's not super important that I do know all of that stuff, but it absolutely helps me in the long run and helps me mature as a defender. So knowing it really allows me to think what the attacker is going to do and try to prepare for that. And in order to start this talk off, we're going to start with an analogy of what those three things are. So I want you all to think about as if you were the mayor of a theoretical town, we'll say on the East Coast, right? Think of a tourism-based town on the beach. They mainly have a couple shops here and there, but they're not this huge place. Everyone comes in for the summer, right? So all tourist based, everything goes off and crazy. If you really want to understand as the mayor, we're going to say you're the mayor, what would really bring our town down? All right. What are the strengths and weaknesses that would stop our town? If anybody in chat wants to think of like, what is one weakness that would just completely shut down a summer town? Hurricane, right? So it's a giant great white shark. That's a little bit on the ball. COVID, right? Maybe some natural disasters, all sorts of stuff like that. Godzilla, yes. So all that type of stuff. But how would we prevent that, right? I really want to go deep into if there is a disaster, we got to try to figure out how that's directly going to happen to our town and how we would defend against it. But you guys hit the nail right on the head, right? So we'll say sharks. So sharks is going to be a big thing. If there's a couple sharks attack at your beach, no one's going to want to come. Everyone's going to be super scared, and we're going to try to want to prevent that in some simple way. So threat modeling, right? We're trying to understand what the threats are, and sharks would definitely be a big threat to my vacation town. So in order to understand the types of sharks that would really want to at least hang out at my beach and possibly attack my tourists, we're going to want to hire a marine biologist, right? Okay, let's understand the ocean around our tiny little town and see what types of sharks there are. There's probably going to be tiger sharks, great whites, maybe, probably bull sharks, maybe other different types, but we don't know. And we need someone to understand the landscape of sharks and our environment for our town, which usually you're going to hire someone who's specialized in that, right? So once you really deep dive and understand what's going out there in the world, you're really going to want to focus in on one particular shark, right? So, right, like you guys said, Jaws is the one simple thing. You're going to want to send someone out there and understand how can we prevent great white shark attacks, right? Sharks are coming in, and are we going to have maybe repellent? Are we going to have nets? Are we going to, what kind of nets would we need to protect ourselves from a great white, that particular shark, right? Is there sound buoys that actually push them away? Do we have bolts patrolling just for that type of shark? Or if it was a bull shark, what would be different, right? So you guys hit it. So I'm using Jaws as an example of threat modeling, threat landscaping, and threat profiling, right? Trying to understand what would happen to our town if a shark was attacking, then trying to then understand when they hire in Hooper from Jaws, if you know who that is, that's the marine biologist. Hopefully you guys have all seen Jaws. So if you have that marine biologist come in and then really understand the landscape, in Jaws, they actually go and I believe kill a tiger shark because they think that was it. And then they realize people are still getting eaten. So they actually try to threat profile what type of shark they're going to go and hunt. And when they do, they think it's going to be a smaller shark than what it is. And what happens? They actually need a bigger boat and they threat profiled incorrectly. Huge shark. Everyone, Brody, what is it? Quint that winds up getting eaten, and Brody and Hooper lost out at sea for quite some time. So this is a great analogy. I was actually trying to come up with another one besides Jaws, but I couldn't really think of one in the time frame that I had. But I love using these analogies on such terms as cybersecurity, and hopefully it helps you guys out. So when you're thinking about threat modeling, landscaping, and profiling, when I dive into the most simplest terms, right? Modeling is looking at yourself, understanding what your weaknesses are, what people are going to try to attack, what are they trying to get, and really trying to know thyself. Threat landscaping, it's more if you're just looking out there. What is going on out there in the wild? Who's attacking what? What are the latest, greatest attacks? What are they exploiting? What are they trying to look for in your environment? And possibly how would I defend them? And then threat profiling is narrowing that vision down into a specific threat actor and really looking at them. What are the tactics that they're using? What sectors are they going after? Who else have they attacked? And what TTPs or tactics have they used in the past? And do I have defenses against that? Can I put preventions, detections, all sorts of stuff out there? So we're going to go into threat modeling first. I'm honestly, to give you guys the real truth, threat modeling is probably my weakest out of the three topics because it is so much more vast than the other two, right? You really need to understand your network and you need to be a little bit more of a red teamer, but also understand a little bit more of programming. So threat modeling is the methods used in cybersecurity to identify and assess possible security threats to an organization. It involves figuring out what needs to be protected, understanding how the systems are all put together, and pinpointing the weaknesses that could be attacked. The goal is to think about these threats in advance and to create plans and prevent or handle them, right? This helps organizations to stay ahead of security risks and making systems safer, right? Trying to understand those risks and either accepting them or possibly putting preventions or detections to see if they're going to happen. There's a couple ways you can, there's threat modeling. There's a couple ways to threat model or use to create. So there's like abstract systems. There's profiles of potential attackers, which we're going to talk about threat profiling, right? And then you also got to catalog all the potential threats that it would arise, right? Usually for blue teamers, this threat modeling isn't typically necessary, but it really is going to help you. If you're trying to defend a particular application, knowing how all the ways it's going to be attacked and will actually allow you to know which type of logs to look at, what type of indicators to look at those in those logs. Or if you're a threat intel analyst, it's the same way. If you know what's going to be under attack, you could actually look for attackers who are performing those types of attacks or trying to go after your sector. It's all going to start to help to provide you with a direction and to start looking and providing other people with information what to look out for. So there's a lot of threat models in or a lot of frameworks with threat models. I just decided to throw 3 different ones up on here. You guys can look up more if you want. So STRIDE, right, is spoofing, tampering, reproduction, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege, right? It's a model developed by security to identify and categorize potential security risks in software applications. Each one of those represents a specific type of threat. The model is particularly useful for analyzing the security systems and applications during the design phase, helping developers and security professionals to anticipate and mitigate vulnerabilities before the software is developed. So you're going to be doing this as you're going through the software to see where you're going to put strengths and weaknesses all the way through it. By systematically assessing each each category within Stride provides a comprehensive approach to ensure that all potential security threats are considered and enabling the development of a more secure system, right? So you as a defense or an intel person, once again, going back to my core, knowing all this is going to help me better defend, right? And also if I'm plugged into the software development phase, even better. I know exactly what they're doing and possibly can see the weaknesses before they actually bubble up into the wild. Another good one that I talk about is PASTA, process of attack simulation and threat analysis. So this is exactly very similar, right? It's a centric model framework designed to identify and analyze, mitigate potential threats in information systems. Unlike other models that solely on software vulnerabilities, PASTA involves like a 7-stage method that integrates business objectives and technical requirements, allowing for a more thorough assessment of security risk. The frameworks encourage a deep understanding of an organization's landscape by considering the factors and variations and threat analysis and countermeasures and developments, right? How pretty much putting everything together. PASTA is a comprehensive approach that helps organizations prioritize security efforts based on like the impact and likelihood of threats and ensuring that the resources are properly allocated effectively to protect against those threats, right? Once again, awesome framework. I know Stride a little bit better than PASTA. And then the last one that I actually use a lot is attack trees, which is less a model or framework and more of a methodology and a visual way of describing the security of systems based on different attack scenarios. This concept, which was popularized by Bruce Schneider, I believe, involves creating and branching diagrams that represent different ways an attacker can exploit vulnerabilities to achieve their malicious goal. Each node of the tree usually represents a specific attack step, with that root node depicting the ultimate goal of the attacker, right? So I have an interesting attack tree right there in the corner, but we're going to go a little bit further. Every one of these talks, I do like to help provide tools with everything I'm talking about. So the next tool we're actually going to talk about is Stride GPT, which is an AI-powered threat model tool that leverages large language models to generate threat models and attack trees for a given application. So based on the Stride methodology, right? Users usually provide it like details such as the application, the authentication method, and whether the application is internet facing. And then it processes that data and helps you go through all the Stride steps. I was using this a little bit as I was updating my Intel class. I actually found this and thought it was pretty cool. I'm very AI forward thinking. So using this is great and all, but you also have to be very careful in providing some type of proprietary information to it that you don't necessarily want people to have. So that's a big thought when using it. It does have a GitHub and a website. So if you Google it, you can easily find it, but all the links are in the slides on the very last slide. All the information that I have for this entire slide deck is right there. So everything's cited and sourced. One other tool that I really like is Decidius, which is a software tool designed to building those decision trees. It's particularly useful in modeling adversary scenarios and attack decision trees, right? It's a pretty straightforward interface for defining these various elements, and it's pretty fun and easy to use. So it works with YAML, right? You can also download this on its GitHub, or you can actually use the application live on the internet. The tool functionally also extends like the generating and mapping the decision tree through skips, enabling users to automate the workflows and managing the trees. Pretty fun and easy to use. So we're going to go into threat landscaping. My voice completely changed. Threat landscaping, right? You're looking out there now. Once we're looking from within, looking at ourselves, now looking way out there to understand what's going on, right? What's changing, what threat actors are changing towards, right? One of my big go-tos, which is I realize completely outdated now, is when macros got originally turned off automatically in Microsoft. We saw a lot of OneNote files, right? So that's a change in the threat landscape, or when ISOs first started to get to use a lot more to bypass the mark of the web. Like these are all attacks, but we started seeing them change a lot more once something moved around within the greater landscape. Another big one is, of course, Okta, right? Okta itself isn't vulnerable, but the Okta is very well known to be manipulated because it was configured incorrectly, right? These are all different types of things going on within the landscape that you can pull back and then look at yourself, right? Learning from others' mistakes is a pivotal part of cybersecurity and life in general. So being able to understand and go out there and try to bring those internally is a very important part of a blue teamer and a threat intelligence analyst. One big one I always like to talk about is passwords in chat too. I forget which actual I think it was either one of the Uber breaches, but it was one of the Lapis breaches. They actually searched passwords in chat and found a bunch of passwords, right? Which is scary. But then one thing to think is if you're working for an international company, search for passwords in other languages, right? Then you're going to also find some scary stuff. One thing I point people towards all the time is those annual security reports. Usually these reports vary vastly between different organizations that are reporting. Some tell you their biases, others don't. They give you a good understanding of what landscape they're seeing and what attacks to really dive into. Maybe what recent threat actors they're seeing or malware, and then understanding that and trying to build your defenses around it. One thing to keep in mind, though, is there is a large amount of bias in these reports, right? Out of these 3 reports, I think the only one that mentions their bias is Red Canary, which I give super big kudos to. Actually reporting what you're seeing and why you're seeing that and what your biases are is very rarely ever heard of. But understanding that only the big cool stuff is usually going to be seen in these breaches. Also, only companies who can actually afford managed security providers are going to be seen in these reports. So knowing that more novel, lesser known attacks aren't necessarily going to be in here, but keeping in mind that these are the stuff that is creating waves in the ocean is important. One thing, when you get more vested into threat landscaping, is your capabilities with it and understanding the risk behind it. Usually at the very beginning, like we said, you're just reading trends in papers. You're trying to relate that back to yourself and your organization, maybe switching a switch for your Okta configuration, or just looking for IOCs and that particular NL test executable running within your network and realizing it doesn't, and then you just block it. Once you mature a little bit further and further, you can then start diving and possibly even forecasting what's going to happen within the future, right? Seeing certain types of malware being more predominant, and or also knowing that a threat actor is been taken down. You can know that possibly, okay, maybe those TTPs aren't going to be used in general. Once again, going back to the macros, right? As soon as we heard macros were going to be used less within Microsoft, we started seeing .OneNote files. That was a really easy thing to forecast. And then knowing also the TTPs, right, and understanding which threat actors are most likely going to use those TTPs. Keeping track of vulnerabilities in this is also a key point. Knowing like the Aviata, or I think that's what it was, the VPN. Once we saw a vast reporting of that, we saw a huge number of breaches around that, and I believe MITRE and CISA were both breached. So once we see some type of gnarly vulnerability, we can possibly forecast that others are going to use it. At the XY, was it XY or XZ? Recent Linux, we are for sure probably going to see more social engineering into libraries that are going to be used. And XZ, thank you. So understanding and trying to prepare your organization for that type of stuff is going to be very important in building out your detections and going a little bit further and deeper, and possibly building protections rather than detections based on this type of stuff. So I'm going way too quick. That Red Bull and coffee really hit me. So we're gonna go in a couple of tools that I like to use for threat landscaping. Social media, right? Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it is dying. I will admit, it's not being used as much as it once was. But having threat Twitter lists on there, I have several Twitter lists of not threat actors, of usually people providing good intel. So I have news, vendors, and just users. So people who are known to talk a lot about different types. And I actually monitor those quite daily to see what's going on and what people are talking about, and then trying to relate that back to my network. Other things to look at is a start.me, which is a cool dashboard that you can create that does similar stuff to that TweetDeck, if you know what that is, which is just a way to look at Twitter lists. Start.me, though, has more of a news feel to it. You can put RSS feeds and a couple other things and cool images. I have my own, but I highly suggest that you go look for other people's and then try to just copy them, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. Someone out there probably already did it way better than you did. So just copy theirs or use theirs is one of my easy wins. Dragon Bites News is just a daily news brief that actually gets emailed to you once a day. Usually it's just a couple news articles of what's going on. Google News alerts. I don't have any of these set up anymore. I used to, but they got too loud for me. If you can set them up, it's perfect. CISA has their Kev, which is also, so it's the known exploited vulnerability catalog. If you can keep up to that and at least understand it a little bit. One thing that I don't have on here, of course, is RSS feeds. I actually have a Python script that lives in my startup folder. So anytime I start my computer, it runs and it pulls down 3 news sources from all the top different, those 3 articles from all the top different news out there. Different, so like Mandiant, with dark reading, all the big Fortinet, all of them, and it just plops it on my screen. Honestly, every now and then it's not so great, but it keeps me up to date with the news and I know the top articles. Some other stuff, of course, the Simply Cyber threat briefing, right? I watch that daily. Try to watch it live, but can't. But just keeping your ear to the ground is very important. Bleeping computers sometimes, not all the time. Usually Wired has some stuff, right? I watch individual authors a lot to understand. The DEFA report is a very big one for me as well. That's really fun to use. Anything that can usually relate more of the blue team. If you're a detection engineer, the Detection Weekly report is also very, very good. So we're going to go into the one that should take the longest amount of time, threat actor profiling. So what's a threat actor anyway, right? So I did want to throw this in here just because we usually have some newer people. So threat actor is a participant in an action or process that is characterized by malicious or hostile action, and so intending harm using a computer, device system, or networks, right? There's a couple of different types of threat actors out there that are going to be targeting you individually. Usually there's espionage. So there's going to be different APTs, which is an advanced persistent threat. Espionage usually relates back to some type of nation state, China, Russia, Iran, you name it. So that would be financially motivated, which can also mingle with nation state a little bit, especially in Russia, right? Are they working for their financials? Are they working for the Russian government? Same thing with North Korea. North Korea is also a nation state threat actors, but they're trying to get money most of the time to fuel their nuclear program, right? Ideological, so since you're hacktivists and terrorists, we haven't really seen a lot of like terror-based cyber attacks, so knock on wood, but we do see a lot of cyber activists. Anonymous is going to be the biggest one. There's a couple that are acting in Belarus as well, and then there's the cyber Parisians. Usually these are attacking other nation states. Seen a lot of in Ukraine as well. There's one I like to say, doing it for the lols, right? The thrill seekers, the people who are hacking just to hack and just to troll. We saw this happen with Rockstar and Uber and a couple other ones with Lapsus. These are my favorite to use as examples whenever talking to board members or anybody who doesn't believe in cybersecurity. Really going into how children, or not children, but younger adults can easily do this and find all the information online and go for it. The other one to think about is competitors, which we don't hear about too often, or insider threats, right? All these are going to be different types of people who are attacking you and who you can potentially profile to understand how they're going to attack you and get at you. So naming in threat actor profiling is very complicated. There's a rumor that there's going to be a naming scheme that grows across that standardizes this, but I'll believe it when I see it. This is actually Microsoft's old naming scheme, right? This comes from Curated Intel. If you go to curatedintel.org, and produced by Bushido Token, which is great Intel resource if you want to dive deeper into him. You can see how each one of these has a different name, but each of them use similar tactics, TTPs, right? And overlap just a little with other ones. Being able to profile these, usually this is going to be security vendors who have a large amount of data, who can track the breach and understand the differences between them and try to find signatures or at least some type of overlapping, either whether it be their target, the tactics they're using, the file they're using, or possibly the infrastructure they're using. So just to go by the numbers, right, there are a lot of threat actors out there. And this is from Title Cyber with their threat profiling. Highly just checking that out as well. So in 2022, Mandia indicated that there's currently 3,500 groups. Oh, in 2023, which is a total increase. I believe in the new Mandia report, they do talk about how many there is now for the 2024, which I'll need to update this slide. I want to say it was like pushing 5,000, right? And then Microsoft indicated that 300 unique threat actors, including 160 nation state actors and 50 ransomware groups. One thing a lot of people don't think about with these threat actor groups is it's not very expensive for a company for a nation to stand up a bunch of hackers, right? It's pretty cheap and pretty profitable. A lot of nations actually all have red teams, and you just don't hear about it because you yourself or your sector or your nation aren't particularly the target of those types of attackers. One that really interested me that I had no clue exists was a couple threat actors that were actually located in Mexico. I was super interested in that just because I hadn't heard about it and wanted to dive a little bit deeper into it. So the threat acting profile, the benefits of actually do it, right? So you want to understand what's going on and what they're doing. So usually these threat actors are going to be a little bit targeted on who they're actually attacking. They're gonna have let's see, you're gonna be able to understand and review your security architecture based on what they're attacking and what they're going through. You're gonna focus on proactively defending those on what they're going after, and then it's also going to help your threat modeling and your threat landscaping. So if you know exactly what threat actors to follow, if you're following ransomware groups, right, you can try to see what they're particularly going after and try to at least inform maybe possibly your threat modeling on, oh, they're using these types of attacks, they're using this type of software, and building out detections for it. Usually, it's not gonna be particularly easy to actually profile. It takes a long time, a lot of research, a lot of articles to go over. One interesting example of this was the 3XC breach. If you guys remember, they were a VoIP provider. 3XC was actually infected to try to they were infected more as a software supply chain attack, where they were infected in order to pivot from them into a bunch of cryptos, into a bunch of different crypto companies in order to go through. So if you were a company that's actually providing services to a lot of different organizations, you actually have to think, who are my customers? How are they going to affect if I get attacked, or if any of my customers if any of my customers are very high probability of being attacked, or their data is in my system, would a nation state hack me in order to understand my customers better, right? China is known to hack people to understand people's finances to better do deals. That was a super interesting one. So then they can get more money out of your client, possibly. So we're gonna go through a quick exercise. I'm going way fast, going way too fast through this slide deck. We're gonna go profiling of a fintech, so a financial services, and understand how you would do it and what you actually want to see and what you want to go through. So the first thing you're going to want to understand is, what sector are you in? Are you in the energy sector? Are you in the financials? Are you in services? By looking at that, usually you can understand what type of actors are going to come after you, right? At least nation state wise. If you're not too important to China or Russia, if you're not holding government secrets, Russia probably won't go after you as much. But ransomware operators are still going to go after you to try to steal your money. That's that's a possible thing. You're going to want to understand who your rivals are. So if I'm a fintech, who are all the other top fintechs? What are they doing to defend? Have they been hacked as well? If they have been hacked, how did they get hacked? Do we have some type of open channel where we're actually talking and communicating how everyone's doing? Each diving into this is actually pretty important just to try to set precedent and learn from others' mistakes, right? Then once again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but understanding your customers and the data you have. Who would want that data? Who would want your customers? And then how would they get at it? So using threat modeling, you can understand exactly how they would get it and what they would want. If you're holding, if you're a defense contractor and you're holding military secrets or plans to the super secret jet, China's probably going to come after you and understand exactly how that jet works so they can build it themselves. And then lastly is the region you're in. If you're in the United States, if you're in Russia, if you're one of the Five Eyes, right? So England, Canada, New Zealand, Europe, England, US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. They're usually pretty tight knit, but they're going to have particular threat actors that are just going after them. If you're if you're in China, right, you're not going to have Chinese threat actors usually come after you. And understanding that can definitely bring down all the threat actors that are coming after you. One thing you want to understand is their intent, right? So judging their intent and their willingness to attack you. This is an excellent article by Andy Pazza called Quantifying Threat Actors with the Threat Box. So he pretty much creates this Excel spreadsheet, of course, to understand why this attacker would target you, your organization, and what type of attack. You're going to go, as you're doing research into your threat actors, you're going to understand and grade them throughout the whole time, and then try to understand if they want specific data, if it's because of ideology, right? And by scoring that, you're going to try to figure out which threat actor wants to attack you the most. Because at the end of the day, like any ransomware group is going to want to hit you because for easy money, but there may be certain different other threat actors who want to hit you more. And so by grading them is going to allow you to prioritize them and understand which ones you should be following a little bit further and which ones you should be fending a little bit more against, right? Their willingness modifier is -2. It's probably going to hit their score pretty heavy. So going back to this, right? We're looking at this screen, and for our potential fintech, for competitors, threat actors, industry threat actors, and then supply chain threat actors, right? So who's attacked people we know, who's attacked people in our industry, and then who would attack people that are our customers. Creating this list after reading a bunch of reports on threat actors, which I'm going to give you a bunch of different resources and to find who threat actors are and where to get that data a little bit later on. So we have total of 24 threat actors right here. So usually you cast your net very wide, right? Figure out, just bring in all the threat actor data you can, and using the threat intelligence lifecycle, which is something you would learn if you took my 101 class, you would dive a little bit deeper and try to manipulate that data and to fine tune and understand exactly what you're doing. What is the pink color? The pink color is competitor threat actors. Is that the pink you're talking about? The one time I read Discord throughout this whole time. So if you look at all three of these groups, all of them aren't going to necessarily be attacking our financial sector. I believe out of these, after doing a large amount of research, there are some overlaps between each one of these groups, which is also good. But then some of these aren't really going to be attacking us. So Lazarus Group, which is North Korea, definitely would be attacking our potential fintech. But shiny hunters, who are they? I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research. Are they still active? I believe they weren't. And they're a little bit on the outs. Cyber Parisians, are they attacking my sector? Are they attacking my industry? I don't believe so. So I would actually throw them out as well. By taking all those threat actors and then creating this cool Venn diagram, it also allows me to understand which exact threat actor I should be concentrating on the most. So to give a little bit leeway, this whole diagram was created 3 years ago, so I do need to update it. So there's a couple of groups on here that aren't as famous as they used to be, and a couple that overlap with naming conventions as well. But it allows me to see that, of course, Conti, which was pretty big back when I made this, is the #1 threat actor that would be attacking me. So Oh, going the wrong way. So now that we know their intent and willingness on which threat actors are actually going to attack us, we're also going to want to know their capabilities and novelty, right? Are they script kiddies? Are they actually nation state level attackers? Am I going to even be able to attack them or detect them, right? If I'm a smaller organization with only 4 to 5 people, protecting against Russia or China is going to be very, very hard for me. And at some point, they're going to pretty much bulldozer me with their resources. So I'm not going to be able to defend against them. So maybe I put in some defenses against them, but I concentrate more on ransomware threat actors because I know it's a little bit of a defeatist mentality, but you got to try to pick and choose your battles. And by doing the capabilities, you're going to understand that a little bit more. So now we have that group of threat actors going all the way through, and we have their aliases, we have their intent, their capabilities, the categories in which they fell under, and then the lists, right? So at the top, right now we have Lockbit. I believe this is by averaging both intent and capabilities. So Lockbit is also known as Bitwise Spider, and they're financially motivated and they're a ransomware group. Those are good. That's probably going to be the first one I go after and go a little bit deeper. Conti is the same rating as that, which is financially motivated Russian threat actor, right? And understand what type of list they're on. Once you get this, you can dive deeper into each individual group and start really grabbing their TTPs. So their tactics, techniques, and procedures. Yeah. Or tactics, tools, and whatever. The types of attacks that they're performing and start creating a list to see what types of attacks overlap with them. And from that, usually you come out with something like this, right? So I would build out all of the techniques of all those threat actors and then really dive deeper into try to pinpoint my defenses, which is like the key word in this, to understand what my landscape is going to be like and where I should actually go with defenses. So VirtualBox sandbox invasion, right? Process injection is all over the place and scheduled tasks. Those are going to be my first things to do. So if you don't know what this is, which I probably should have explained, this is actually the MITRE attack framework. I grab all of the data on those TTPs and then build out a mapping of it and throw it in what's called the MITRE attack navigator, which is this nice cool sheet. So each one of these actually breaks down into even more detailed tactics, all the ones with the little brown line on them. And you can go a little bit further and understand how those techniques. I also throw notes in this, which you can't necessarily see. Those notes are going to tell me which individual threat actor uses this attack and what I think their intent and capabilities are. By using this data, you could either hand it off to your intel team or your threat modeling team or your defense team, right? All depending on who you're working with and who you're working for in order to improve your company's security overall. So a couple of resources to go over for different threat actors, right? Malpedia actors is a great one that has a bunch of different types of threat actors. You can search and look what type of malware they're using. MITRE attack itself has groups. MITRE attack is usually a little bit, I find it sometimes a little bit outdated just because it's not as updated, but it has a great mappings and has those maps that you just saw back here already created for you. So with those maps, you can easily create your sheet and understand it. And then also the MITRE attack navigator has ways of actually melding different attack groups together and then creating those maps for you. APT groups and operations is actually a Google Sheets file. Links to all this stuff are actually in the very last slide in the slide deck. So if you guys go to resources within the Discord, the slide deck should all be there. And then Tidal Cyber has a bunch of free resources as well. They have a GitHub with a bunch of great data into it, as well as they used to have a free service that I would actually recommend checking out too. Well, I finished 20 minutes early. The coffee and Red Bull hit me a little harder than I thought, but I was trying for hard mode. If you guys really enjoyed this type of stuff, we did glance over a lot of these topics. Each one of those could be a full 8-hour course in general, to tell you the truth. Threat modeling and threat actor profiling and threat landscaping can be complete jobs all together, each one of those, and they are in certain different types of organizations. So if you enjoy it more, go to the next slide right here. Here's all the resources for everything I've talked about. There's a link for you to dive further and further into it. highly suggest checking it out. If you guys did enjoy this, I am teaching Threat Intel 101, which will actually go deeper into a lot of these subjects and also provide labs and that type of stuff. I'm teaching on Thursday, June 20th at the Incident Response Summit that was talked about earlier. I'm also at Wild West Hackin' Fest on October 9th. My class is the only 8-hour class in both of those. So if you don't want to spend 2 whole days, come hang out with me and have more super cool analogies for cybersecurity or other things. Thank you guys.
Awesome, dude. Thank you. Appreciate
Cool.
it. Like, come through it, eh?
Dude, yeah. Yeah,
All right.
a little too quick. The timing was a little bit better. So usually when I go through this stuff, I have labs too. So this is so this direct presentation is a manipulation of my actual class. So this is straight part of it. And I wasn't sure with the timing. I definitely need to go through it. But so hopefully you guys learned some stuff. And if you didn't like what I said, all the links are in the slides for you to dive deeper into it and go further.
Awesome, dude. Thank you. So this was a learning experience for you then.
Definitely. Yeah. This
Okay.
one was a little bit harder than the rest of them. The other thing is, yeah, we are a little bit early, right? I also had like way too much going on this week. I had 5 days of SANS training before this.
Oh, goodness.
And I know, right? I prepared a little bit last night, but I definitely could have done better. But
No, dude,
whatever.
you did
That's
great.
all
No, no,
public
no.
speaking.
No, you did great. So the reason why I asked, like, if it was a learning experience, because like, okay, so you went through this talk and you went through it pretty quickly. So it's like, okay, well, now maybe next time you'll figure out, hey, like, do I need to slow down a little bit?
Oh
Do I need
yeah.
to add more content?
So
And I just bring this up because, like, when I asked before you started, I had asked about like advice for public speaking and all that. So,
oh yeah, no,
it's just kind
that
of
is a
cool to see, like,
yeah, the learning experience. So one thing I did look at that I was looking at Discord a little too much, probably. And then also I looked at the counter of how many people are in right now. And I was like, oh, but definitely. So my overall take on that is I'm thinking in my head, the moment we get off this chat, I have to write notes down and understand where I had holes in my entire presentation. Usually as I'm doing the whole shark analogy, I don't even mention cyber. I just do straight a shark analogy. Like you're the mayor of a town and go through it. But also with I beefed up the threat profiling one, and I thought, or not threat profiling, threat modeling. I actually, of course, of all people, to always mention every one of my reports, Graham actually sent me some really good information on threat landscaping, and so I threw that in. Or I'm not sorry, threat modeling. My bad. Of course, and I need to do a little bit more with the threat actor profile and update that. But yeah, it's always a learning experience. You're gonna fail sometimes. Like honestly, I thought this went better than my first CTI 101 talk. Like that one, I'm like horrified about. That's still on the internet.
every time is a learning experience,
Yeah,
man.
definitely.
I just wanted to touch on that a little bit since I brought it up earlier.
No.
Um, so you have a couple questions here. If you got some time to answer them.
Yeah, go for it. Now we do have time for the AMA.
Yeah,
Perfect.
right. Yeah. So Matthew here asks, how would or could you use OpenCRE for mapping CTI to attacks and I can't even say the word mitigatory controls. I cannot talk today. Oh my gosh. I'll put it in
Yeah, let me
here.
look
You're
at
looking at
Discord.
Discord. I'll put
Yeah,
it in
yeah.
Discord. I cannot. I not mitigation. Wasn't mitigation. It's in the Discord chat.
Okay. How would you use OpenCRE for mapping CTI attacks to mitigate controls? Honestly, I have to Google what OpenCRE is right now. Let me see.
I love that.
OWASP. Okay. Open source. So a lot of this is going to be with your vulnerability scanning, right? And understanding what you're vulnerable to that particular source, right? And then understanding your application. So this is going to go into like the threat modeling side. And then you have to know both sides. So this is the one bad part about doing all 3 of these things, which most 3 of these things are usually 3 different jobs. You have to relate and talk to each topics. So there is a heavy push right now, of course, for threat intel or what I think, what is it? It's like threat intelligence provides threat intelligence provides vulnerability information on what to patch and on what to patch first, and what you got to think about what's being used out there, right? What's actively being used against threat actor, what's actively being used against your sector, or what's easily, so using like what the CVE scores and stuff like that to understand which to patch first. Threat informed defense. That is what I'm trying to think. That's a hot topic term right now on how to operationalize threat intelligence. And there's a lot of vendors talking about it. Usually there's going to be connectors with those two. Hopefully that helps you somewhat. If it doesn't, message me and I have to do more research on OpenCRE.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. Do you have any playbooks you could provide?
Ooh, I do. They're like playbook, like what type of playbooks?
I don't know. This was from an anonymous attendee. So they just said,
Anonymous attendee.
yeah, could you
So
provide some playbooks, please?
I will provide you people to go with to get playbooks. So if you were to take, if I had my entire class right now, I do have a bunch of playbooks in my class. Um, Intel 471. I don't think they get enough light shined on them because they actually have a lot of good information out there and excellent playbooks, like straight PDFs to follow to like for several different Intel things that you would do. They don't talk about it a lot. I found them through someone telling me about them. So go to Intel 471 and look through their resources and they'll give you some cool playbooks.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Emmy Banks, I love this question. We're not going to answer it, but I'm going to read it out loud anyway because it's funny. I'm going to add to it. They said, "Where are you from, and are you working somewhere, or are you on your own? And what's the last floor of your social and the street that you live on?"
uh
That was
I
a
You can kind of guess where I'm from with the giant flag behind me, or at least where I am. And if you want to know all the rest of the information, I'm on LinkedIn through Wading Through Logs. My social's on there just in case you need it.
Here's a Discord question. What are the best cyber threat intel or threat hunting certs or courses in your opinion?
Ugh, so
Specifically to learn about APTs, if possible.
yeah. So my master's thesis or whatever practorum you want to call it, I actually dove into every single threat intel class that I could to judge it based on what it was teaching and how much it cost, and then how much access you had to it. And looking that over across like everything from SANS to try hack me, I wound up taking like 5 different courses that I could afford. I think the most expensive one I paid for was MITRE ATT&CK, which theirs was free, but if you wanted the certs, it cost money, which I didn't figure that out until after I paid, of course. Theirs was very, very good. I think it's called MAD. If you look up MITRE MAD, yeah, they have attack and training. So hopefully their training is still free. It used to be up on like Cybrary or something like that. And they have excellent intel. You'd think it leans more towards MITRE ATT&CK and using that framework, but the overall intelligence part of it was absolutely excellent. The other book is Operationalizing Threat Intelligence is a book that would teach you. Courses wise, I don't I don't know what to recommend just because they're either great and very, very expensive or cheap and not so great. Try Acme actually has a lot of good threat intel courses. I think they were literally the best bang for your buck. Was it like $10 a month? And they had 7 different rooms that I would suggest. So
Awesome. Have you used, and what is your experience with the fairly new CTI blueprints?
ooh, yes, I have used them. I do have those in my class as well. I think they're pretty good. Um, I take everything with a grain of salt when I look at them, right? So I use them as a framework and then I manipulate them to what I want. Hopefully that helps you. Overall, I think they're very good for people who are just starting out and need to understand. So, like as for me, I built a cyber threat intel program where there was none. And so those helped. I think those even weren't out when I did it. So those would have vastly helped me to move a little bit quicker when I did that. So I think they're good for people coming in.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I'm not seeing any more questions coming through. So if you all have some questions that you want to ask
Perfect.
Wade, throw them in the chat right now. And I'm sure he would love to help answer whatever he can. Appreciate you doing this, Wade.
Yeah. What try hack me rooms? I will. So if you look up CTI, like Cyber Threat Intel, there's several try hack me rooms in it. I'd have to log in and tell you. I definitely have them in my notes somewhere. But there's not just like, so there's OSENT, right? There's Cyber Threat Intel basics. Then there's also like red team intelligence. They added a couple the last time I looked. Threat miner room. Okay. I'm honestly surprised because I know they have paths. Um, the last time I looked, they didn't have like a threat intelligence path, which I think they should definitely have. They have enough courses to have one. Excellent. So Haircut Fish posted a great picture of that. I was at when I was writing my training and I was looking for some information to relate to and to always, so all of my trainings have links to absolutely every single slide. The best part of it was when I was trying to just find some like intro ones, the first person I found was Haircut Fish's blog on the intro to Cyber Threat Intel room. And it was great.
That's awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Haircut Fish. Oh, I love it. I put a link to your class in the chat also, so if
Oh,
people
cool.
are interested in
What
checking out
programs
your.
and tools do you recommend to review system architecture for threat modeling systems, right? So that one's hard. So to understanding your network and your individual. So I do have in the course, there is a whole section that I call inventory, right? Know thyself, and to try to understand either using OSENT to try to map out all external facing things that your company has, right? Or trying to dive internal and talking to people throughout your organization. So my first one to go to is as a blue teamer is always Bloodhound to try to understand Active Directory. Um, I believe there is Spiderfoot. Is that one? Yeah. Spiderfoot for OSENT. There's also one that Black Hills used to have that was really good too. Oh, it's nah, it's Spiderfoot. No, I have notes like up on that wall. So that type of stuff, I would talk to your threat and vulnerability management team to understand, and your devs. One of the first things I suggest doing is talking to someone on every team to understand what they think the weaknesses are of the network, or at least the program. Depends on, like, threat modeling is such a vast term, right? You have to like kind of pin down to what you want to model. Oh, Spiderfoot got acquired by Intel 471. There you go.
Can
Yeah,
you
Spiderfoot does take effort. It
can you
does.
share your RSS feed list?
Uh,
Asking.
if you, I think the older version of it, let's see, is it still in my GitHub? I may have hit it because I hit all my repositories in GitHub. I did have I purposely had some canary tokens in there that people hit me up about, which was kind of funny.
Awesome.
I will share the best way. Okay, if you go to my Twitter, and I believe my lists are all open, my tweet list, they actually follow the same thing, which is wading through logs. You don't need to follow me. I honestly don't I don't provide value, if that makes sense. I don't post on LinkedIn. I don't post on Twitter. I just do stuff like this instead, and then do the news and try to talk to people. I think social media is kind of a rat race, so I try to stay away from it, which is bad for advertising.
That's true. Are there any sharing communities for CTI that you would suggest?
You know what? When I told John this, that Black Hills became an excellent CTI community because of the news channel in the Discord is actually like spot on. Like, people throw great articles in there all day long. That is literally like my first go-to is the news. The other ones I would suggest are just like going on Twitter and trying to understand who's there, or there's a couple start.me pages. Start looking for like awesome CTI, and you'll find good stuff. I don't even know how to get to my lists anymore. Gosh, Twitter is just so X, whatever you want to call it.
It's Twitter. It'll always be Twitter.
It'll always be Twitter.
Always be Twitter. I put a link in the anti-cast chat too for the Black Hills Discord server if y'all aren't part of that yet.
Yeah.
I think Ryan is showing the InfoSec News channel on the Black Hills server right now. All right, I don't see any other questions coming up.
Perfect. I have a meeting in 30 minutes. So
All right, awesome.
I
Well, we
know some of
appreciate
my coworkers are possibly watching this, which is also funny.
you.
I don't tell them that I do stuff, and every now and then one will post like in our teams. They'll be like, "Why is Wade doing things?" I'm like, "Ah, I don't want them to know."
Wade does things. Wade does
Yeah,
all the things.
I do
Well,
all things.
we appreciate you being here and sharing
Yeah,
your knowledge with us, man.
yeah.
Good stuff. And we're gonna see you in about a month for your class
Month
at
and
the
then Way
Insider
West.
Sun Summit,
If you guys haven't bought your Way West tickets, I will be keynoting Way West, which is
Wild West,
also Wild West. Oh yeah.
Wild West.
Way West. Gosh darn. Way West is the one in San Diego. I'm slowly trying to bring it back so I don't
Well,
have to travel.
we're
You want to
going
come
to
here?
we're going to Denver next
Yeah,
year.
but John wants to come back to San Diego. He tells me all the time.
Wade West. That's what somebody
Wade
said. Wade
West.
West. Wade West. All right. No, we can go Wild Wade West. Perfect.
Waiting all the things. Thank you. All right. Hope you guys have a good day.
Yeah, hope you have a good day too. Thank you for joining us, man. And thank you everybody else out there who's joined us today. You can find us next week. We'll be doing this again at our same regular time. But if today you guys are looking for something to do, John Strand will be live streaming his active defense and cyber deception class for free right here on YouTube in about a half an hour. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, y'all have a great week. Take care and have fun.
Bye.
See ya.
Kill with fire. All right.